Hello, geometry, and I'm just going to give you a heads up on this one. You are not going to like it. However, I'm going to try and make it easier by showing you how it's connected to some old skills that you know, both from algebra and from first semester. So first thing I want you to see is the lesson lays the groundwork for tomorrow's lesson. Make sure you understand what is going on today as much as possible. So already referenced this, we're going to do some old skills. I have 3 old skills that we're going to be working on. First one is finding slope. All right, so finding slope, there's a formula for that. Finding slope, which is m, is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So find the slope between those 2 points. This is straightforward algebra 1. Just going to do it real quick just to show you that we've done it. Y2 is 1, y1 is -2, so 1 minus -2 over x2 is 5 minus 7. 1 minus -2 is 1 plus 2, so that's 3 over -2. So the slope on this is -3 over 2. That is not what I'm going to be asking you to do. What I'm going to be asking you to do is more of what's on the apply it. Instead of having points with numbers, these points are going to have variables. All right, so find the slope between 3a comma b and 2a comma 0. Same thing though. Y2 is 0 minus b over x2 is 2a minus x1 is 3a. So 0 minus b is -b. 2a minus 3a is -a. There are 2 negatives, so negative divided by negative is positive, so the slope here is actually b over a. Okay, so that's slope. An old skill, we're applying it to variables only. Old skill number 2, distance. This is the one you're not going to like very much because the distance formula is a little bit nasty. You may remember it from first semester. It is x2 minus x1, that whole thing squared, plus y2 minus y1, that whole thing squared. All right, so again, we're going to do it with points. This was actually unit 1 in first semester. So here we go. X2 is -1 minus x1 is 3 squared plus y2 is 7 minus y2 is 4 squared. -1 minus 3 is -4 squared. 7 minus 4 is 3 squared. So that's 16 plus 9 square root of the whole thing. So square root of 25, which is exactly 5. So the distance between those 2 points is 5. Great. What happens when you don't have numbers? You have variables. And I gave you a little bit of a tricky one here on purpose. So here we go. X2 is b minus, okay, a plus b. So minus, and I have to put another parenthesis here, a plus b squared. And then I'm going to add the y's. So y2 is c, y1 is 2c. And I'm subtracting those and then squaring. Now what happens is I'm going to be distributing this negative into both of these. So it's actually going to be b minus a minus b squared plus c minus 2c is -c squared. All right, so b minus b, those b's actually cancel, and I'm left with -a squared plus -c squared. Well, -a times -a is positive a squared, and -c plus or times -c is positive c squared. Now, a lot of people think you can cancel the radical, or sorry, they can cancel the radical and the exponents. You can't because of the plus. So my final answer here is actually square root of a squared plus c squared. A lot of times with this, your answer is going to look like that. It's going to look like an expression with a square root over it. Okay, that's okay. You're going to see what that looks like in the next lesson, but you need to practice actually finding the distance in this lesson. That's what we're doing here to build for lesson 7. Old skill number 3, this one's a little bit easier than the previous one, is midpoint. So with midpoint, the formula was x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So basically you're taking the x's, adding them, and dividing by 2, finding the average. Then you do the same thing with the y's. So with the points, 5 plus 1 divided by 2, comma, -2 plus 3 divided by 2. Just simplify them up. 5 plus 1 is 6 over 2. And then the other one is -2 plus 3 is 1 over 2. Reduce if you can. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 1 divided by 2 I can't reduce, so it's just 3, comma, 1/2. And look how the answer looks, the point there. We're going to do the same thing with variables. So -b plus -b over 2, comma, 2c plus -2c all over 2. I'm going to start simplifying. -b plus -b is -2b all over 2. 2c plus -2c is 0 all over 2. -2b divided by 2, the 2's cancel, and I'm left with -b. 0 divided by anything is 0. So my midpoint is -b, 0. Okay, so that's straightforward using those skills, showing you how that looks. What you're going to have to do is what's on the back. So let's go to the back. Finding coordinates. So you're actually going to have to find either 1, sometimes 2 coordinates. In this first one, it's going to be find W and Z. Once you find W and Z, you're going to find the slope, distance, and midpoint of line WZ, or in this case, it's a diagonal. Now, let's talk about how to figure this out. So I'm given this coordinate here. I don't want to use any new variables, so I have to use B or H. W and Z are not variables, but I'm going to use B or H, okay, and or H. So 2B is the X coordinate, which means the distance from the origin horizontally is 2B. Well, that distance from the origin horizontally is right here. So this is 2B. Technically, that top one is 2B, but that matches the bottom one because I know it's a rectangle. The Y coordinate is the vertical distance, is 2H. So from the x-axis to that point is 2H, which means from 0 to W is also 2H. Now with those all there, I can find the coordinates of W and Z. So coordinates are X first. So W, what are the coordinates? How far to the right or left did I go? Well, I didn't go at all. I'm still on the Y-axis. So 0. And how far up did I go? 2H. Z is on the X-axis. How far over did I go? I went over 2B. How far up did I go? None. So those are your coordinates. Just like at the apply it on the front, we're now going to do those 3 things. We're going to find the slope, distance, and midpoint. So the first thing is slope. Y2, which is 0, minus Y1, which is 2H, over X2, 2B, minus X1, 0. 0 minus 2H is -2H. 2B minus 0 is 2B. My 2's can reduce, so I'm left with -H over B is my slope. Okay, distance. X2, and by the way, your formulas should be in front of you when you're doing these. I'm not going to make you memorize them, although you should know them. X2 is 2B minus X1, which is 0, squared, plus Y2, which is 0, minus Y1, which is 2H, squared. Let's simplify inside the parentheses. So 2B minus 0 is 2B. 0 minus 2H is -2H. Now, a lot of people think, oh, it's just 2B squared and -2H squared. No, 2b times 2b is 4b squared. And negative 2h times negative 2h is positive 4h squared. Again, you cannot simplify that anymore because of the plus that's in there. So my answer for the distance is square root of 4b squared plus 4h squared. And then the last one, midpoint, x1 is 0 plus x2, which is 2b over 2, and 2h plus 0 over 2. 0 plus 2b is 2b divided by 2. 2h plus 0 is 2h divided by 2. The 2's cancel, and I'm left with b h as my midpoint. Okay, that one was pretty straightforward because it was a rectangle. I know it's probably not. You're like, that wasn't straightforward. But wait till you see the next one. So I'm gonna clear this. We're gonna look at the next one, the parallelogram. So this figure is a parallelogram. All right. What does that mean? How does that help me? Well, think about what parallelogram means. It means that the opposite sides are congruent. So this side and this side are congruent. This side and this side are congruent. It means those opposite sides are also parallel. It also means opposite angles are congruent. It also means the diagonals bisect each other. All of those things are going to come into play, or could come into play, because I know it's a parallelogram. But I'm going to use what I just marked on that picture. The opposite sides are congruent. Well, that bottom side has the length of b. How do I know? Well, I look at this coordinate here. That point right there is b0. That means the distance, the x distance is b. Well, if that distance is b, the opposite side is also b. Okay, well, that's going to help me find t, because t is measuring the distance from the y-axis all the way over to t. So it's b plus that distance right there. Well, what's that distance right there? Well, I'm going to use this coordinate here to help me with that. How far is that point right there that I have circled? How far is that from the y-axis? We'll look at the coordinates. CD, that's the x coordinate. So that distance there is c, which means from the y-axis all the way to t is c plus b. That's the x coordinate. That's the tricky part of this one. The y coordinate shouldn't be too bad because the distance up from the x-axis is d, and that's given by, again, this point. So the same thing for t, the y coordinate is d. So my coordinates for t are c plus b, comma, d. Now we want to find the slope of st. So st is the diagonal. All right, so slope of st would be x2, so d, or sorry, y2, d minus 0 all over c plus b minus 0. So that's just d over c plus b. And that's your slope. So slope is d over c plus b. Again, not a pretty slope, but we're just using the formula. All right, so that was the slope one. Distance is even uglier. Distance is really ugly here, actually. X2, I'll just do c plus b first. Subtract 0 squared plus d minus 0 squared. Well, that gives me c plus b squared plus d minus 0 is d squared. Nice thing is I don't do anything with d. Now c plus b squared means c plus b times c plus b. And I have to FOIL that. C times c is c squared. That's bc. That's bc again. And that's b squared. Combine like terms, I get c squared plus 2bc plus b squared. So I'm going to take that and put it back underneath the radical. And I get my distance is c squared plus 2bc plus b squared plus d squared. I will not give you anything that disgusting. Okay, but I want you to see that the answers here can be kind of disgusting. All right, so that's your distance. Now, I could take numbers and put them in for B, C, and D to check. Something you can do. It would take you a little while, but you could do it to see if you're doing it correctly. All right, midpoint, not as bad here. C plus B plus 0 divided by 2. D plus 0 divided by 2. It's just going to end up being C plus B. I'm just going to put it down here. C plus B divided by 2 and D divided by 2 is the midpoint. Okay. Again, this is probably going to have no, you're going to be like, why are we doing this? When we're doing it to practice this lesson, it's going to seem like that. But when we get to the next lesson, I hope that you see why we are doing what we're doing. So that's the end of this lesson. And we'll hit the last lesson tomorrow.